A stillness permeated the resplendent halls of the Galactic Council, a silence that would have been unimaginable just moments ago. Where once stood the greatest leaders of the known universe, forging alliances and guiding civilizations towards enlightenment, there was now only rubble, smoke, and death. Ambassador Adesina coughed violently as she came to, her lungs filled with thick dust. All around her, cries of pain and despair could be heard beneath the cracks and creaks of the demolished pillars that had once supported the ceiling of the Grand Assembly. She struggled to pull herself up, squinting through the haze at the nightmare view before her. The entire north wall had been blown open, the ornate carvings and shimmering stained glass shattered. The soaring dome ceiling now lay collapsed onto the circular council seats, crushing the most revered beings in the galaxy underneath. Fires raged through the gardens visible through the cavernous breach, sculptures smashed and fountains spilled across the pathways. The shine of emergency crews flickering in the distance provided only a dim glimmer of hope. What happened? Adesina rasped, clutching her broken arm as she stumbled over the debris. She came across the broken body of Chancellor Valus, leader of the now extinct Paith species. A warrior race, their brute strength and wisdom had kept the council united for centuries. She bowed her head sorrowfully before his lifeless corpse. There was a cough nearby, and Adesina scrambled desperately towards it. There, half-pinned under a fallen pillar, lay the battered figure of Ambassador Taros, representing the enlightened alien race of Nabari. She helped drag him free, wincing at his wounds. "Taros, my friend," she said mournfully, as she tried to make him comfortable amidst the devastation. He clasped her hand with surprising strength, his faded eyes filled with grief and rage. "It was the zyon," he whispered. "They have destroyed everything." Adesina reeled back in shock. The Zyon Empire had been growing in power on the edge of known space, but to directly attack the Council in this brutal way was unthinkable. They had rebuffed all diplomatic negotiations by the galactic delegates, preferring isolation and opacity to open cooperation. "But why?" Adesina asked in dismay. "We voted just this morning to send a peace envoy to them again. Why do this?" Taros shook his head bitterly. It was never about peace for them, only conquest. They want to rule the galaxy unchallenged. With heavy hearts and burning fury, Adesina and Taros picked their way out of the demolished assembly, the last surviving members of the Galactic Council. All around them, their allies and comrades lay dead and dying in the rubble. The wail of emergency crews drew closer, trying to make sense of the devastation. As Adesina limped towards the line of rescue ships growing closer in the smoke-filled sky, she stared up at where the council banner once hung majestically over the gatherings. Now it lay tattered and burned, the once bright symbol of cooperation and unity trampled underfoot. She met Taros's eyes, seeing her own grief and anger reflected there. "The council is no more," she said solemnly. Taros's expression hardened with cold rage. "Then we must look to our own. Our species must defend themselves." She nodded grimly. The Zyrons would pay for what they had done this day. She tapped her communications band, connecting back with her people on Earth. "Ambassador Adesina to all humanity. The Zyon Empire has destroyed the Galactic Council and annihilated our allies. We are now alone against their tyranny and bloodlust. Prepare yourselves. War is coming." A pall of grief and anger had descended over Earth following the brutal attack on the Galactic Council. As the smoke cleared on the devastated capital planet, it became terribly clear that every major alien civilization allied with the Council had suffered immense losses. Edie was alone now against the hostile and mysterious Zyon Empire. But Ambassador Adesina had underestimated her own people. Rather than panic or retreat in the face of this existential threat, humanity had drawn together with a shared purpose not seen for centuries. The diverse peoples of Earth, once divided by creed, race, and history, now stood united. Not since the desperate battle against the Clixor invaders generations ago had humanity acted with such solidarity. From the megacities to the remotest villages, humankind knew that this was a fight for civilized freedom across the galaxy. And so, they came forward in droves. From all walks of life, the young, brave, and talented signed up to join the United Terran Defense Forces that had once seemed a mere ceremonial vestige of the Galactic Council ties. Now, it swelled with new recruits ready to stand against tyranny. Sergeant Rennet gazed out at the endless rows of fresh young faces in their crisp new uniforms as they assembled on the tarmac, the old soldiers barking orders drowned out by the roar of nearby starfighters taking off. He saw the fire in their eyes, the determination to succeed where the Council had failed. Word of the vile zyon cruelty had only strengthened their resolve. Nearby, Captain Valez was coordinating the mammoth effort to ready the aging Terran fleet for true war. Engineers worked feverishly to equip mothballed cruisers and frigates with the latest photon cannons and hyperdrives. Pilots rushed to master the new long-range interceptors rolling quickly off the assembly lines. On orbital defense platforms, grizzled veterans prepared the next generation in the desperate arts of war. Lance Corporal Z listened closely as Sergeant Okafor pointed out weak points on common Zyon mechs and warships floating in holograms before them. His grip tightened on his pulse rifle, ready to use such knowledge in the battles ahead. But the true stirrings of hope came when the Terran ambassador stepped forward to speak. Adesina's strong voice rang across the solar system, broadcasted on all channels. Though still bearing fresh scars from the Council massacre, her words were firm and defiant. She spoke of humanity's spirit of endurance, of their burning drive to survive and thrive, of a dream for a peaceful galaxy that they now carried alone on their shoulders. And she spoke of victory not just for themselves, but for all who had fallen to tyranny's shadow. Her speech was met with thunderous applause across Earth. From the defense grid headquarters to packed bars and homes, a collective roar arose from humankind. They knew the odds, but fear had turned to righteous anger and an iron will to win. On the distant imperial palace of Zyon Prime, the Emperor observed all this with growing concern. Their spies showed the rapid Terran mobilization and the miners of the outer moons now churning out ships and weapons faster than calculated. "They are defiant," the Emperor observed, "a weakness we shall crush beneath our boots." But his supreme generals were less certain. "Do not underestimate humanity, my lord," warned General Azeloth. "Desperation has forged them anew. This collective spirit is their strength." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, his claws slowly digging furrows in the arms of his throne. He gazed upon the teeming human world so ripe for conquest. "Then we shall test this strength, General," he purred. "Ready the fleets. Set course for the Sol system." The first battles against the Zyon invasion fleets proved brutally to the humans just how outmatched their forces were. Although the Terran Defense Forces fought bravely, their antiquated cruisers and untested recruits were little match for the advanced warships and battle-hardened legions of the Empire. Devastating losses soon forced the adoption of a new strategy. If the humans could not go toe-to-toe with the Zyon Armada, they would have to fight smart, striking quickly and fading away before the enemy could retaliate. Soon specially trained units were conducting daring raids and ambushes, utilizing the human smaller size and maneuverability to confound their lumbering foes. Striking unseen from nebula clouds or asteroid belts, the Terran fighters would unleash surgical volleys on the Zyon supply lines. Lieutenant Wheeler's Scorpion Squadron had already developed a reputation for these guerrilla attacks. Their modified interceptors with advanced cloaking systems were ideal for hitting isolated targets on the fringes of the Zyon advance. As they closed in on a defenseless transport convoy, Wheeler couldn't help but admire his pilot's skill. The Zyon sensors were too primitive to pierce the human cloaking fields even at close range. They just had to position their ships in a spread formation around the convoy's vector. On his signal, the Scorpions decloaked and unleashed a withering crossfire on the transports, too quick for the slow anti-fighter guns to track. The Zyon ships erupted in flame, their precious cargo spilling into the void. Before the warships could react, the squadron was cloaked again, ghosting away into the asteroid belt. "Convoy successfully eliminated," Wheeler confirmed to Terran Command. "And the Zyons didn't even get a glimpse of us." The success of such operations soon had the Zyon leadership outraged. Their uncomprehending tactics always fell for the human trap. "These humans are like mosquitoes," General Zdaloth raged as another ambush report came in. "No matter how many we squash, more keep stinging us from the shadows." The Emperor's mood only darkened further as the raids continued unabated. Demands for faster sensor upgrades and more screening ships went unfulfilled as Terran sabotage hindered production. For the indomitable Zyon war machine to be stalled by such pinpricks was humiliating. Soon Zyon commanders refused assignments to the Terran front, fearing the damage to their reputations. The humans were winning a psychological battle, making a far larger empire seem helpless. But as victories mounted, Wheeler noticed a change in his pilots. The cloaked attacks were reducing Zyon morale, but at a cost. The lack of direct confrontation was frustrating for the human fighters. They wanted a proper battle. "This system hopping is all well and good," his wingman Lieutenant Reyes complained, "but we should be taking the fight to them." Wheeler was torn. Their primary duty was to soften up invaders for the main Terran fleets, but the eagerness for open combat might spiral out of control. Command had to adapt before raiding turned into reckless heroics. The guerrilla strategy was succeeding, but human instincts yearned for more. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, Terran engineers labored secretly on a project to satisfy that battle hunger. The new Ajax-class destroyers would carry advanced shields and firepower unmatched in the quadrant. Soon the Zyons would be in for a nasty surprise. The new Ajax-class destroyers were a breakthrough for the human fleet. Fresh out of the Kuiper Belt shipyards, their heavy armor and adaptive shielding enabled them to withstand the Zyon onslaught, while powerful railguns and plasma torpedoes could punch through enemy formations. At the Battle of Taros, the destroyers would prove their worth. The Zyon troops had occupied the planet Taros IV as a staging point for deeper incursions into human space. A vital industrial world, its loss had stalled Terran efforts elsewhere. Now a major fleet detachment moved to retake it. From the bridge of the ADS Perseus, Commodore Elias watched impatiently as the blue orb of Taros IV grew closer. The crews were spoiling for this fight after months of frustrating guerrilla actions. "Enemy contacts detected," reported his sensor officer. "Two full Zyon battle groups holding orbit over Target City. They're launching fighters." "Acknowledged," Elias said. "All ships assume attack formation Lambda. Prepare to engage cloak on my mark." With thrusters flaring, the human ships adopted their tactical positions, the destroyers with their gravitic shielding at the fore. At the Commodore's command, they activated their cloaking fields and faded from view. The Zyon commanders would be anticipating a direct assault, not this unseen approach. As they closed into weapons range, Elias waited for the right moment. Just as the Zyon warships began to detect something amiss from the gravity distortions and moved to respond, he shouted, "Decloak! Open fire!" The human ships shimmered back into the visible spectrum, railguns and torpedoes already hurtling towards their targets. Taken completely by surprise, the zyon formations dissolved into chaos under the intensive barrage. Their return fire splashed harmlessly off the destroyer's shields. From the surface of Taros IV, the local resistance watched in awe as explosions lit up the skies above. The much-feared zyon fleet was being torn apart by some new Terran weapon. Hope soared anew. A transmission crackled through on their battered comm system. "This is the ADS Perseus to Taros resistance. The cavalry has arrived. Liberation is imminent. Hold on just a little longer." A ragged cheer arose in the hidden bunker. The end of the occupation was in sight thanks to these mysterious saviors. On his command throne, the zyon general stared uncomprehending at the unfolding rout. "Impossible! Their ships resist our bombardment while shredding our armor. The humans have adapted faster than we anticipated." The Emperor was likewise stunned when the battle report reached his throne. "This cloaking technology cannot hide them forever. I want those new ships reduced to scrap," he snarled. But the zyon counterattack would never materialize. Their losses were too great. While the Empire reeled, the Terran fleet pressed their advantage. Planet after planet was liberated from the invaders. Until now, the Zyons had sailed serenely over humankind, confident in their supremacy. No longer. These ingenious, defiant humans had become the one obstacle to total conquest they could not surmount. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor felt uncertainty about the future. Ity, quote, "S time had come." The crushing defeat at Taros IV left the Zyon invasion forces scattered and demoralized. Seizing the advantage, the United Terran Defense Forces prepared for one final audacious assault, a direct attack on the Zyon homeworld itself. From the bridge of the ADS Atlas, Supreme Admiral Laird gazed out at the massive strike fleet assembled for the mission. Humanity was staking everything on this desperate gamble, amassing their strongest warships and best troops. Failure here would doom Earth. But the risky plan was the only way. As long as the Zyon Emperor sat enthroned, the threat would remain. This would be a battle for liberation and retribution. As the invasion fleet entered the isolated Zyon system, Admiral Laird addressed his forces. "For too long we have suffered under the shadow of tyranny. Today we make a stand as one people, not just for Earth, but for freedom across the galaxy. By our actions, let the Empire fall." A deafening chorus of cheers roared back across the communications channels. Humanity's finest knew the odds and fears they faced, but stood resolute before destiny's calling. The Atlas and her escorts led the charge, shrugging off defensive fire as they breached the planet's energy shield. Wave after wave of dropships hurtled towards the surface laden with troops and armor. What Zyon forces remained planet-side scrambled to meet the landing zones. From her APC, Colonel Silva watched grimly as Zyon walkers emerged from underground bunkers to oppose the beachhead. But the human soldiers kept their cool, following their training to neutralize the threat with mortar strikes and anti-armor teams. Silva allowed herself a thin smile as momentum shifted their way. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Zyon home fleet had emerged in full force to repel the audacious invasion. Attack drones and boarding craft assailed the Terran vessels from all sides. On the Atlas bridge, alarms blared as explosions rocked the hull. "We've lost the Athena and Zeus," the tactical officer reported. "Enemy flagship is closing fast." Admiral Laird studied the chaos stoically. "Regroup defensive squadrons around the Atlas," he ordered. "We must give our ground forces more time." Far below, the dropship carrying Corporal Raj and his fire team descended through boiling anti-aircraft fire. Their target was the Imperial Palace itself, where the Emperor had retreated as a last redoubt. Raj clamped down on his nerves. The entire fate of this battle rested on him and his soldiers. Slamming into the reinforced palace gates, the human troops disgorged and began their assault. Ferocious close-quarters combat raged through the opulent halls as elite Zyon Praetorians fought to the death in defense of their ruler. Despite painful losses, Raj and his team battled forward, driven by the righteous justice of their cause. In the throne room, the Emperor watched the skies darken and the palace defenses falter. All seemed lost, but the venomous tyrant refused surrender. When the human invaders finally battered down his doors, he charged forth to make his last stand. But Raj was quicker. With a burst of plasma fire, the terrible Emperor fell. A deafening cheer rose up from the exhausted soldiers. Victory was at hand.